Greetings, family. Liz Owens here, and I forgot to turn the record button on for the Owens social last night. So I'm going to do a recording now to share with you some of the information. Um, it's Monday, February 15th, 2021. There's a blizzard going on outside. Well, it's not a blizzard because it's not blizzard conditions all the time, but there are blizzard conditions built within this snowstorm. So since gotta stay in, waiting for there to be enough snow to make snow ice cream soon. Yay! I'm gonna go through the history parts of our discussion last night and just let you see some pictures and stuff people started. So, being Valentine's Day yesterday, our subject was love stories from the family. And there's a lot more than what's here on the PowerPoint and so on that we discussed. Again, I apologize for not getting the recording. So, here we go. We're going to talk about Lonnie and Obie Owens. So, we're all descendants of Isaac and Caroline Owens. So, let's start there with them. And here's the only picture we have of them. Isaac William. And part of the problem with finding things about Isaac is also that his name has lots of different variations on it. We've seen him just called Izzy or Eyes. And Isley, his name ends up a lot of different ways. Caroline is his wife there, and we'll talk more about each of them as we go. But this is the picture that's on our Facebook page for the descendants of Isaac and Caroline. And here's their marriage bond. And I know it may be hard for you to see. You can see somebody has written it with very beautiful handwriting. The most important thing to me is in the bottom left-hand corner. And again, about middle of the page on the right-hand side, page 84, I think it is, you can see that they've written William Owens, and there's been an X put there as his signature in both places. Okay, so they write William I. Owens, and then he puts an X in as a symbol of his signature. So that makes me wonder about his level of being able to read and write and so on. And then his brother is the one who actually goes and witnesses this with him. And you can see his name and signature there also. And even more interesting is the bond. The surety bond was put up by Caroline's father, George B. Davis. And on a future Descendants, we'll talk about George B. Davis and all that went on with him because there's a lot of interesting stuff there. It's not a marriage license. The idea of a marriage license doesn't come along until later. And at Kentucky, before the turn of the century, back in the late 1800s, a marriage bond was very prevalent. And so Caroline had had a previous marriage bond, but we don't know exactly who with. And whoever that was was the father of Mandy Francis Dishman. And so we'll talk more about that in just a second. But on this documentation, it says it's the first marriage for each of them. The marriage bond was signed on May 23rd, 1883. Mandy Francis was born 1881. And they're actually married on May 24th at the home of George B. Davis. So I just thought this was interesting for you to see that the legality is a little different. Um, and you can see $100 is the sum there. Now, we've talked before that William Isaac, who was not Mandy Francis's father, raped her, and she then had Lonnie Owens. Lonnie doesn't exist in a lot of legal documents. We don't have a birth certificate or anything before, but we know he was born in 1897. William, Isaac, and Caroline on the right-hand side here have all these children. Okay, and they're going to come back around. You're going to hear more about them here in a few minutes. Okay, and then Mandy Francis married Alvin Bransford Dishman, and then on the left-hand side is their children and kind of where they ended up on both sides I've listed there. If you have any questions about this, please put it in the chat or send me a message and I'll be glad to talk to you about it. So it's important to track where people lived. So in 1861, William Isaac was born in Pulaski County, which is just north essentially of Wayne County. By 1880, he's living with his father and mother. He's 19 years old, living in Slick Ford, okay, with father and mother, and that's from census data. By 1900, he's listed as the head of household. In 1910, he's listed as the head of household, and same with 1920 and 1930. But the households have changed a little bit. Now, in 1897, Lonnie was born, but he does not appear anywhere in the 1900 census documents, and I have looked everywhere. I have tried to see if he was with William Isaac's family somewhere. He would have only been 3. I've tried to see if he is with Caroline Davis's family somewhere. So Caroline is the grandmother to Lonnie, and William Isaac is the father to Lonnie. Mandy Francis is the mother of Lonnie. That gets a little confusing to think about, I know, but that's something we've documented pretty well. Lonnie's not in the 1910 census either. And I would think he would be there, being only 13. But this is going to be important. We're going to come back to the 1910 census in just a minute. In 1920, Isaac is listed as being in Slick Ford, head of household, living on Dry Hollow Road. And there's only a couple roads. We discussed this last night with the cousins, and Dry Hollow Road's pretty obvious there. Caroline had died in 1918, and so Elta, his daughter, was living there with Grover, a grandson. And right next door to William Isaac is Charlie, his son, Caroline and William's son, Charlie, and Maida. And we know that by 1930, there are several events that happen and they move out to Iowa. So if you think about our relatives in Iowa that you may have met years ago, that's them. They come from Charlie and Maida. And then 1930, William Isaac has married again, Catherine Slagle, who was another neighbor down the road on the census. But he does not appear again. We don't have a specific death certificate or anything on William Isaac. Those are things I continue to look for. But that gives you kind of an idea. He always lived in Kentucky, either Pulaski or Wayne County. Really didn't travel out of those regions at all. Maybe over into Tennessee, because Fentress County is just south of Wayne County there. But that's where he lived. So that kind of helps us to track Lonnie. Now let's talk about Grandma Obie Cook. And she was born in 1900 in Pall Mall, Fentress County, Tennessee, which is just, right over the line in Tennessee. Forbes is there, okay? Fentress County is just right there at the base of Wayne County. Interesting enough, we mentioned that 1910 census. In 1910, William Tobe Cook and Catherine Crabtree Cook, and their family lived in Slick Ford, Kentucky, including Obie. So Obie would have been 10 years old. She may have run into Lonnie. He was 13 at that time. They were in the Slickford area. I don't know that they would have been in schooling together necessarily. There was only one school, but because of Lonnie's age and so on, he may have not been there. He may have been working. Um, but they were in the same small location as recorded on the census at that time. Tobe and Catherine take their family back to Fentress County. By the way, Tobe is uh, he runs stuff with mules. He's transporting things all the time and logging and so on. They go back to Fentress County, and both of her parents die in 1915. So at that part, there is Obie left at home and Wilby. Okay, Obie and Wilby. And I believe they go to live over in the Slickford area with her sister Addie, or their sister Addie. We'll talk more about that. You can kind of see where Obie's family have gone to. A couple in Georgia, a couple in Gainesville, Kentucky. Powersburg's right next to Slickford, and Piney Woods is very close too. So the family kind of sorts itself into different locations based on economic opportunities. I believe like Arson was some kind of foreman in a business, and that's why he brought brother there. I think James was a construction engineer or something, and he brought a brother there. So the family moved for economic opportunity other than Obie and Wilby are the children who need to get some place to live. Freeman may have also been taken in by one of the brothers there in Gainesville. Yeah, that's what I thought. James took him in. So how did they meet? Well, we talked about they were both in Slickford in 1910, so maybe around there. But Obie and Wilby go to live with Obie's and Wilby's sister Addie and her husband George Buck, who live on Otter Creek Road. So that's two of the three roads we've mentioned now. I'm sorry, Dry Holler Road. It should be an Otter Creek Road. In 1920, Wilby is still living there with Addie and George. And in 1921, Addie has a baby that is born and lives about a month and dies. And then Addie dies in September, and the death certificate says dropsy heart. So apparently a heart condition. And if you think about it, Obie herself and many of her children have heart issues. Okay, so there's a clear genetic trend there. The picture on the right is the first picture we have of Lonnie and Obie, and that is Ethel sitting on their lap, their first baby, maybe about a year old. So we think this picture is from about 1919 or so, and Wilby is standing behind them. Now, Wilby had a twin brother, Hollins, who died at birth, but Wilby had survived, and she's going to be a topic of a future conversation. So this is where things really start to get interesting. So George Buck had been married to Obie's sister. He then remarries to Bonnie Ethel Piles, who Lolly Owens Piles, was the child of Isaac and Caroline. So Bonnie is the grandchild of Isaac and Caroline. So this is where our genetics really start to get interesting. In many other instances too. So George was married to a sister of Obie. Then he's married to the niece of Lonnie. Just let that settle for a minute. Here is the first legal document that I have ever been able to find for Lonnie, and it's his World War I draft card, filled out in 1918. And it tells you that he's 21, living in Layton, Kentucky, born on July 30th, 1897, in Slickford, Kentucky. He says his father's birthplace was Wayne County, Kentucky, which is Slickford. We thought it was Pulaski, but that's there. And his next of deceased or his next relative is Obie Owens, his wife. He's married. So here in 1918, he's married and they're living in Layton, Kentucky. Well, that was always a mystery to me. Why in Layton, Kentucky? So I started researching Comet Oil Company, and this just popped, and we're fortunate to have this next piece of information. Estill County's northwest, about 50 miles from Wayne County, and a large farm that had been owned by J.F. Harris was sold to oil companies, including Comet Oil Company was the original lessee there. And they split these drilling lots up into 20 by 40 feet drilling lots, about 20 oil companies drilling there. And these are actual pictures from 1919. So what I think is really cool, this is what Lonnie would have seen working there. You can see the various storage tanks. You can see there were about 15 wells, 4 drilling rigs going on. Now, I don't know that Lonnie had any oil drilling skills, but he had common laboring skills and about moving oil, hauling oil and stuff, all those kind of things. So I think this is a really cool picture that actually shows us exactly what Lonnie would have seen going there to work for the Comet Oil Company. So that's why they're in Layton, Kentucky. So this begins the pattern of Lonnie and Obie following economic opportunity. So here's the location. I call the big square down at the bottom here the homeland. Wayne County is where Monticello is. Clinton County, Pulaski, Russell, this is all area where we have lots of family living now. And Estill County, you can see up here about 50 miles to the northwest. And of course, Tennessee, Fentress County is just south here of Wayne and McCreary County. And I will tell you that some of these names and lines adjusted over the years, but that's generally what it looks like now. So let's take a look at Wayne County. Here's the 3 towns we frequently mention in our family. Again, Slickford, Powersburg, just a few miles away, and Sunnybrook, a few more miles. And you can see Monticello up here in the middle. And this is actually a map from 1911 because, as you know, the Cumberland Dam project happens and some of these little towns go away. They don't exist anymore. I think some of these right in here maybe. Okay. So here are the children of Lonnie and Obie. And following where they were born, and you kind of follow the economic travel of the family. So Ethel was born in Wayne County. I don't have a more specific location than that. But she wasn't born in Estill County, Layton. She was born in Wayne County. So I think they had gone back to Wayne County at that point in 1919 and were there working, doing whatever. I think probably about the time May is born is when Lonnie starts working more for the railroad. And I would contend that most of the rest of these births going through probably Chester are because they're living in the railroad camps. Okay, we have pictures of Arnold and Grace on playing as little ones on the railroad line. Uh, what would happen is there'd be a house, and a train car would come up that had a big crane on it, and it would pick up the house and it would move it on to the next railroad camp, and the family would move there then. So my dad, we know, was born in a railroad camp at Rock Creek, and that should be Tennessee, not Kentucky there for him. Somewhere at that point, after my dad was born, they moved back into Slickford, and they're there for several years. Lonnie's sharecropping, working for the Cogers, I believe, doing all kinds of stuff around there. And then in 1941, they make the big trip up to Newcastle, following the jobs up to Newcastle. So you can see there was a pattern of where they could work, wherever Lonnie could work, that's where they were moving around to. And that's very common for families from our region of the country. Jerry did tell us that he was actually born on O's Mountain, which is named for a name not for the Owenses, but for the O's family. And there were people there named O's. And yeah, that's actually where he was born. Here are just some pictures that were submitted to us. So I'm just going to quickly jump through them, and you can read the information if you have questions about any of them. These are some of our great love stories and love of family. Uh, Chase Lovell is a mail order pastor or a clergy. So if you need services, let him know. This just happened that Ollie's is selling wedding dresses for $69.99. So if you need to pick up one, there you go. And we closed with this. So if you have any questions, contact me. Put it in a private message, or put it in the, probably if you have a question, other people are going to too. So put it in the chat pod below this video where I posted. So I hope that was helpful, thinking about another piece of the family. It's always interesting, but I think what it showed us again was a lot of people, a lot of couples having loving families, and continuing the love of our family for each other. So happy Valentine's Day. Stay safe in the snow. Bye-bye.